We got confirmation a few days ago that it's all systems go, and the Notorious, will be returning in the UFC Octagon this summer.
Conor McGregor has yet again announced his return to the Octagon, saying that it's, quote, all systems go for this summer. Today, we're going to talk about the potential return of the notorious Conor McGregor, and I'll give you my thoughts, so stay tuned. I'm Wyatt, and this is Fight Society. All right, guys, so another update in regards to the return of Conor McGregor. For probably the fifth time now since his injury against Dustin Poirier at UFC 264, he has announced his return. He says that it's going to be this summer, so maybe it could be that June 29th date that he originally announced. Maybe that would be UFC 303. It could also be UFC 304. But with the way that the UFC wants Conor fighting in the big venues to sell out bigger tickets, bigger gates, they would most likely put him in Vegas or Madison Square Garden. And Madison Square Garden's not going to be till November. So if he's going to fight this summer, it's not going to be at Madison Square Garden. It's going to be in Vegas, which would be International Fight Week, June 29th, UFC 303. Because there's rumors of them returning to England. I don't think that he's going to be on that card this summer because they're already planning on having Tom Aspinall against somebody like Curtis Blades or Ciryl Gane on that card. And there could also be Leon versus Bilal on that card, especially if it's a pay-per-view. They'll put both of those fights on there. If it's just a fight night, I could see them doing an interim title defense for Tom Aspinall. If Conor's going to fight, it's going to be in Vegas or it's going to be at Madison Square Garden. So that makes sense for it to be June 29th. He told Mark Raimondi with ESPN MMA that was the date, or that it was going to be this summer against Michael Chandler. And he said that the 170 pound or 185 pounds was not necessarily confirmed. I don't really think I believe Conor. I think that this is Conor's getting some publicity because Roadhouse just came out and he wants to ride that wave into pressuring the UFC into booking him a fight with Michael Chandler. But there's so many things that are up in the air. Conor has 2 fights left on his contract, which the UFC has been in no hurry to book him at all, which makes me think that they're trying to ice him out and not have him fight again, because the UFC does have a habit of devaluing their stars towards the end of their career, basically making it so that they can't go make money somewhere else for a different promoter in boxing or another MMA promotion or anything like that. And given that the UFC has settled their antitrust lawsuit this week, the UFC can do whatever they want when it comes to devaluing their fighters, suppressing fighter pay, drowning out other promotions. As I talked about in my video yesterday, they can do what they want now. They have a vice grip on the sport at this point. And as much pull as Conor McGregor might have, as popular as he might be, he is at the whim of the UFC. They decide where Conor McGregor's career goes from here. Unless he wants to go off and be a celebrity and do movies and TV and celebrity appearances, then he will fight when the UFC tells him to fight. He will fight if the UFC lets him. And unless they renegotiate a deal, which is probably going to include less money for Conor, because the new pay structure of these contracts does not include these $30 million paydays that Conor has been reported to make before, the UFC probably wants Conor to take a massive pay cut and make somewhere in the 10 million range for fights. And I can't even necessarily say that they're wrong for that, because I don't think that Conor has the pull that he once did. I know that he's still the biggest name in the sport, still the biggest name for the casuals, and he's going to do the most pay-per-view numbers. But compared to what he used to be from numbers and money brought in for the company, I don't think he does the same. I think that he actually needs a B-side. It used to be Conor could fight anybody. It could be Conor against Cowboy Cerrone at 170 on 6 weeks notice, and it would do an insane amount of buys. But I think that Conor's shine has dimmed a little bit in the eyes of the UFC because they're building up these new stars. And I'm not saying people like Sean O'Malley or Bo Nickel are at Conor McGregor level, but compared to how much those people get paid, they are a much better deal for the UFC from a value standpoint. And that's why I think the UFC will lean more into people like Sean O'Malley, who is a champ that they can pay somewhere in the 1 to 3 million range for a title defense, as opposed to Conor, who's going to command 20 to 30 million. The UFC wants to push the brand over the fighters. And they learned that lesson from boxing because the boxers were always bigger than the promotion. People care about Floyd Mayweather, Canelo, Oscar De La Hoya. People don't care about Golden Boy Promotions or the Money Team in the grand scheme of things. But the UFC has positioned themselves to where people care about watching UFC events regardless of who's on the card. I mean, you can even see that with these bullshit Apex events that they've been putting on, where you have, like this weekend, you have Rose Namajunas and Amanda Ribas in the main event, and then you have Carl Robertson and Justin Tafa in the co-main event, or you have unranked fighters in the main, or you have unranked Joe Pyfer in the main event. The UFC is very clearly trying to make it about the brand and not the individual fighters' names. Now, on top of that, my skepticism towards Conor's return actually being this summer, if ever, is because we heard it was going to be December. We heard it was going to be July before that. Michael Chandler was trying to fight him in 2022. And now he's telling us it's going to be summer 2024. I think this is the 4th or 5th time that Conor has told us he's going to be returning. And I'm just losing hope. The UFC doesn't seem to give half a shit about booking him a fight. Dana even shot down the idea of the Nate Diaz trilogy, which I don't understand. That's the biggest fight that they could make for Conor right now, is against Nate Diaz. Maybe it's because Nate would want a ridiculous amount of money and Michael Chandler already has a contract, so that it would make more financial sense for them to book Conor against Chandler. But I just don't understand. I don't know what the holdup is. I don't know why Conor's giving us dates. Conor's saying it's Dana. Conor's saying the UFC is the reason that they're not fighting. Dana's saying that Conor's not ready to fight and he hasn't shown an interest in fighting. Somebody's lying here, and I want to know what's going on because I'm just on the edge of not caring about Conor coming back or not. I would be fine with him retiring. He's made a shitload of money. He should be able to ride off into the sunset if he wants to, but if he really wants to fight, he should be able to do that as well. He's under contract, and I don't think it's right. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter if it's right or not because of this lawsuit that just got settled, but I don't think it's right that you can put a fighter under contract and then ice them out to where they can't do anything. Ariel Helwani mentioned that the UFC's TV deal is up at the end of 2024, I believe, and they could be trying to leverage him to be a part of that new TV deal in terms of negotiations. If they re-sign him to more fights, then they can leverage within their TV negotiations, hey, you'll get 2 Conor McGregor fights out of this deal. And then if they can't get him to re-sign, that could mean that they're trying to stretch these last 2 fights that they have with Conor into that next deal, or at least leveraging them in negotiations for that next deal. Whether it be a re-up with ESPN, a move over to Netflix like WWE just did with Raw, and given that they're under the same TKO umbrella, that would make sense as well. You also have the Peacock deal out there that the WWE has, and you also have the potential for something like their own website or their own streaming service. I mean, imagine how much money the UFC would make if they were to put everything, fight nights, pay-per-view cards, everything through UFC Fight Pass, and they could just cut ESPN out. We'll see where this goes. Let me know what you guys think. I'm very skeptical that Conor McGregor returns to the octagon this summer. I'm pretty skeptical that he returns ever. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think that the Roadhouse movie and the momentum from that will help Conor leverage himself into a fight? Let me know your thoughts. If you like this video and you want more content just like this, click that subscribe button down below. If you want more content from me, go check out my weekly comedy podcast, the Hissyfit podcast, and go check out my personal channel, Wyatt's World. Go watch this suggested video, and I'll see you next time.